I just love looking at the book and these little packages that embody so much time and work. And of course they go and they put the name of the author on the front. But I've realized, getting into my own work, that if you do not make your writing a collaborative project, then you are seriously limiting your ability to be able to look objectively at your work. Today's episode of Punk Write deals with the main reason of why you should get an editor if you're serious about publishing your work. Stick around. Hello everybody, welcome back to Punk Write. My name is Smee. It's been a few weeks since I've made some videos and I've been a little bit sidetracked. No, not sidetracked. I've been very focused on a different task. And so I've been off the video. And you know, the funny thing happens too is that if you spend your time away from videos or writing, you kind of lose your edge a little bit. And it's taken me a long time to get this video thing back going. But I'm back, I'm on it. Today I want to talk about the editor. I haven't really talked about my book much either, my manuscript. 2 months ago I sent off my manuscript to an editor who I hired. I bit the bullet, I spent the money, and without a doubt, it's probably the best money I've ever spent. Particularly if you're a writer out there who's not taken any formalized writing classes, the money that you will spend on an editor, a professional editor, evaluating your work is the best thing that you could do for yourself, your craft, and your process. One of the things that you have to consider when you look at the length of a book, and this is a standard book by Cynthia Voigt, we're looking at 100, 200, 300, 400, this is nearly 400 pages. There is a lot that goes on in 400 pages. You're looking at characters and plot development and character arcs and twists and turns and progression, tone, fluidity. How do you actually conceive that for yourself and put it into a nice little book? Very, very difficult. The editor who I hired completed what is called a developmental edit. She's looking at big picture elements and making sure that pieces fit together, that fluidity works, that there's a certain logic in the time, plot, and the pacing of the book. It is a holistic view of how your story is working. This is one of the most complicated parts in terms of writing fiction. I'm sure it gets easier as you write more books, but just because you can read a book and understand a book and even identify certain aspects of the technique does not necessarily mean that your application of that is going to be successful or totally clear. And this is why the editor is so invaluable, because they help bring a certain level of objectivity to the subjectivity of your own story. Of course, as the author, you have the control of what the thing is about, how the idea is being originated and developed and progressing. Even that will have flaws. It doesn't matter how good you think you are or how long you have been writing, you're going to have certain gaps in your storytelling. The developmental editor is there to put in the time and take the care to give you some very serious feedback so that you can make the necessary changes so that your story is cohesive and solid. This doesn't have to start with the editor though. You can take some steps beforehand, even before I send it off to her, because it's going to cost me about $2,500 to get the edit done, which is not cheap, but considering I've never taken any writing classes, I look at it as higher education. But before you do that and spend the money, you want to get the most out of your editor. And so I would suggest that you send it off to some readers first to make sure that the big flow and concept of your story is something you can actually work with. And make sure that they are honest readers. If it falls flat with 3 or 4 people and they turn it back to you and just like, then you know that you're going to have to do some very serious revisions before you send it off to an editor. Writing is not a natural human capacity. We have invented this technology that helps us take the evolution of our linguistic capacities to be able to put it into some sort of symbolic form in a written form. However, that translation from brain to paper is not always the clearest thing, which is why you want to make sure that your message is clear. The developmental editor is there to ensure that the big concepts are nailed down and concretized into something that is cohesive from your brain to the page. And the other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of having an editor take a look at your work is the epistemological wonder of that whole process. Because there's so much that you believe that you know until you have somebody point out all of the errors and the flaws in your writing. It's a 5 million kilowatt lamp that is suddenly shown on your work to lead you through all of that quagmire of writing that you think is clear, yet really it's just a mucky, murky ocean. And to have someone point out all of the areas that you need to work on, it suddenly becomes so clear. And this is the question of epistemology, that when you have someone who shows you correctness or shows you a piece of knowledge, suddenly you are enlightened in that part of your craft and you're just going to get better and better. This is why you hire an editor, because that knowledge is worth the money. So lastly, I don't want to underestimate the work that it's going to incur once you hire an editor, because without a doubt, no matter how good you think your work is, it's going to come back with some serious changes that will need to be made. I believe this is true at any level, whether you're an amateur or even a professional. You've got teams working on your work, on your manuscript, to make sure that it's the best that it can possibly be. And lastly, I will say that even though I'm interested in self-publishing my book, Scarboys, I understand now why the publishing industry takes such a large percentage of those cuts from your earnings if you were to be a professional writer in that respect. Because the amount of people working behind the scenes is something that most people don't understand when they purchase a book. The value of that book includes the editors and the publishers and the book designers and all of those people who are doing the best to make the most beautiful final product that they can. As an independent publisher or an independent writer, you can be sure that you're going to have to do all of that work, which is where I have been for the last weeks, getting up every morning, writing and plugging away. But I enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you should look for something else to do. That's it for today on Punk Write. Until the next episode, I'm just going to keep on working. You should do the same. Just write. Punk Write.